In this video, I would like to talk about engagement letters. When you start working with a client, the first port of call is, of course, communication, setting up a meeting and discussing what services they require, what services you can provide. And as I mentioned in my toxic clients video, please make sure you understand the nature of the business, you understand what documents, how they were kept. These questions are very important. You understand that what systems they used. When did they submit a tax? Is it everything in time? What's the reason for moving from one bookkeeper to another? Or if there's change of accountant, what could be the reasons? You're just investigating a little bit because it should be not only good for your client to take you as a bookkeeper, but also for you to undertake this client in your portfolio. Make sure the client pays in time, the client has a reputable nature of their business, and they have all documents in hand, including the sales, invoices, receipts, no gaps and nothing lost in the fire or laptop is broken or whatever reasons. So please make sure that you do this step first. Understand your client you would like to work with. During communication, once you understand, okay, that's my client, the next step would be of course to sign a document with a client which clarifies the scope of the services that you provide, the pay rate that you agreed to have, when the payment is going to be made, so within 30 days from invoice date, for example, how often do you need to perform the services, is a monthly agreement, or would you be working ad hoc and you agreed for 10 hours a month, for example? Would it be on site? Would you work online in your own office and premises? And this is also very important because within the engagement letter you can add different clauses which will protect you in the future and which will make your life much easier in case of any potential court cases or any complaints raised by your client. So we will now going to have a look at the content of the engagement letter. Let's now dive in and investigate what exactly do we need to include, and my personal clauses that I highly recommend to use in your engagement letter with your client. Please watch this video before you sign any engagement letter, and let's go ahead and look at the engagement letter more in details. Alright, so we're now going to discuss engagement letter content, and we're going to have a look what information we need to include in engagement letter. I'll run through a few important sections. Of course, you can make it as big, as long as you like, and include as many clauses as you require. However, I highly recommend to include at least these sections that I mentioned, regardless if you're working as a bookkeeper or if you're working as an accountant, and regardless what services do you provide in the accounting profession. So let's go ahead and have a look at these sections. So first of all, you need to include in engagement letter address of your company or your sole trader entity, your name, your address, your contact details, the client's details, address, numbers, contact information. Then we go into the main, of course, topic. We name this report engagement letter content, and you can call it engagement letter. And then we go into the section. Section 1 would describe the scope of services. Here you would say, thank you for choosing our business. We are happy to provide you the following services described in our engagement letter. And also mention the professional ethics that you will be closely working with, code of ethics and so forth. So you will offer professional services in line with code of ethics. And you don't need to expand on code of ethics, you just have to mention that. Section 2 describes limitation of liability. This is very important section to protect yourself from any toxic clients you somehow took into your portfolio. And this section prescribes which responsibilities over what services or what information do you take on, and which responsibility is basically a client's responsibility. If the client responded to information late, sends information to you not in time, if there is unreliable data or so forth, you have to put it in the clause here. Also, amount of responsibility in terms of finance. So let's say that you take responsibility of 3 amounts of VAT, and that's amount that it's your limit for the claims, for potential claims, if your work has been negligent or inaccurate or incorrect or unprofessional. So section 2, we list the responsibilities we are responsible and we are not responsible for. Section 3, communication. So in this section, we will talk, how do we communicate with our customers? How do we supply information? Is there a specific person in their department who we will communicate? How often perhaps we will have to communicate if you're providing management reports, if you have to send the data to the accountant or to the management financial advisor or so forth. So you need to all agree before starting the contract. Section 4, agreement of terms, data protection, commencement of work. Period of engagement, if that's a short-term engagement or if it's a year, I highly recommend to do it on a yearly basis. You can be a rolling contract, which means that you've done it once and then you would roll it for a few years or so, but I highly recommend to do it in 12 months chunks, which means you'll review the work when you need it. Confirmation of agreement is required to be confirmed by signature, which means it's either by paper, which is signed by a client, or it's digitally signed. Either way is fine. Make sure you use a good system for digital signatures. I will recommend a few examples in the comment section below. Section 5, cancellations. So here we say, okay, after we sign an engagement letter, you have 14 days to cancel the contract, if perhaps they decided not to go ahead with the engagement of services, or if you require to issue another one, perhaps you agree on another pricing or extra services, you need to issue another engagement letter in this case, and agree how much will be paid if you already started work and it's after 14 days of commencement of the engagement with the client. So also make sure you put in a cancellation and data protection in the previous, including also due diligence checks, which I have missed out, but it's important to tell the client that subject to diligence checks, or perhaps you would run the credit check on the client if you require, because you don't want to take a toxic client, and it's only fair for you to mention diligence checks in the previous section. Then we have a main purpose, scope, and retainer. So here we actually put in details, what are we going to do for a client, how much is going to cost, how the customer or client needs to pay you, bank account details, and perhaps if you expect the payment within 30 days, you clearly say 30 days, failure to pay you within 30 days will lead to interest being charged for delayed payments. Here is very important point about out-of-scope services. So we have defined above which services are we going to do, and if the client is asking for services like tax advice or to run a management report, which is not part of your services, don't be shy. It's okay. You can say, of course, I can perform these services. I can help you out. I will send you a quote for the services, and if we agree on the pricing, so forth, we can, add it in engagement letter, which we will sign if it's ongoing project or it's just a quote. But do not be afraid to say, well, here's out of scope services paragraph, where we can say, if you decide to go ahead with services outside of what we agreed, here's what's going to cost, or within 14 days we're going to issue a new quote for this specific service, and that's going to be agreed with your client. Lastly, acceptance of terms. So as your business, you will have terms of agreement and the terms of conditions of your business. Of course, every business would have to give a copy of terms of conditions, and any questions from your client they can also ask you before signing engagement letter. So we will discuss terms of conditions of the business in the next video. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please send me a message. Happy to answer. Thank you so much, and see you in my next video.